Welcome back to Exquisitely Aligned, where we empower you to be your finest self and live life on your terms. This way you can enjoy a more fulfilling, richer, deeper relationships, and just a better overall experience and become exactly what the world is missing today. Today, I cannot believe it, but across from me and across the country is one of my nearest and dearest besties. And so I'll introduce you to her. Her name is Michele Schmidt, coming to you from Charlotte, North Carolina, where I used to live, but we met all the way back in New York, in Manhattan. So with almost 2 decades of teaching experience, Michele Schmidt is a yoga therapist, yoga teacher, meditation teacher, yoga mentor trainer for new instructors, and offers continuing education. She teaches both in-person and online classes in slow flow, restorative, gentle yoga, yoga strength, meditation, yoga nidra, one of my favorites, and myofascial release. She also leads TRX and TRX yoga group trainings. I do know her well enough to know that she does sleep and eat, but you can see she is a busy woman. Michele specializes in working with students who have musculoskeletal pain that affects the muscles, tissues, tendons, ligaments, and bones, as well as the psychological effects of living with chronic pain, which I know all too well. Stress, anxiety, and depression. Students have seen a decrease in their pain response. I'm going to repeat that again, okay? Students have seen a decrease in their pain response, anxiety, and stress level. We're talking about without drugs. I mean, she is so gifted. As I'm saying it, I'm getting goosebumps. An increase in mobility, flexibility, strength, balance, and experience more restful night's sleep. Again, we're talking about naturally. She's not dosing him up with drugs. She's not pinching him with a needle. It is all natural. Off her mat, you can usually find Michele making something, sewing, painting, jewelry, making anything crafty. I will also tell you, like me, she likes to paint the house. Okay. She also loves being outside in nature, walking, which I miss our walks together, canoeing. I definitely miss paddleboarding with you too. In the last few years, as so many others have, she enjoys working on puzzles, which I don't. She and her husband are empty nesters. Newly empty nesters, I'm going to put in there, but soon will have their hands full with the arrival of 2 new kittens, which means I need to make a trip back to Charlotte, North Carolina to play not only with you, my best friend Michele, but with these new kitties. So welcome. So happy to have you here with us.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
So, Michele, you and I have some things in common, which they may not know, is that we started in New York together, right? In the fashion industry, right, which sometimes feels like yesterday, but other times it feels like a totally different lifetime ago. I don't know. And then you moved before I did to Charlotte, North Carolina. And I don't even know how many years later it was that I ended up there myself. Also,
I think it was very close.
Was it?
Yeah.
I was trying to think. It's so long ago I can't even remember. So about a year, and there we became, in my opinion, better friends. I got to know you much better, and our lives have mirrored each other in ways. You married, although I'm older than you by a few months. A little bit, same year, thankfully, but you married ahead of me, and then your son is 2 years older than mine. Your daughter is 2 years older than mine, and we started yoga school together, but way back when, our first teacher training. So I want to ask you today, I want to discuss, I was thinking this could be a mini series. You have the right. You're like, oh my God, I signed up for 1 episode and now she wants me on a mini series. And I think we have to tell your husband the mini series has to be filmed live here in California. So we'll just have to make sure we make that happen. But today I'd love to touch on yoga, it's healing you, what you've seen, how it's changed your life. I know it's definitely has changed mine, even though I'm not teaching classes anymore. I still like to use it in my one-on-one work, because it's like for me, I would describe it as a new way of living and being. But give it a voice. How did yoga, like, what drew you to it at first?
Well, I started over 20 years ago. I was new mom and had lots of aches and pains like most new moms do from holding a baby, breastfeeding. You're more concerned with them sleeping than your own physical state, right? If they just stay quiet. So you end up in these shapes and don't want to move for fear of waking them up. So you end up suffering. That's one thing yoga teaches you, right? How to get out of that suffering. So I did start yoga. Somebody recommended it and I started. That first class, it's so hard just to get there as a new mom. You got to pack them up, take every gear with you. You get there. I didn't even make it through the grounding. And the grounding, if you haven't done yoga before, is the beginning first few minutes where you're really just connecting that you're there and finding your breath. And I didn't even make it through that. And they came in and, they have free childcare and they came in and said, you're going to have to come. We can't calm them down. You're going to have to pick them up. So I
didn't even know that, or I don't even remember that, I guess. I don't think
you were with me at the time.
I know I wasn't, because I wasn't living close enough at the time, but what a shame. But it's true. Like, getting there, that first class with or without kids can be intimidating. And then all of you, what you went through. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, having somebody come in and say, you got to pack up, and everybody's quiet with their eyes closed at the beginning of the class, and you're trying to quietly get all your stuff together and get out the door. So that was my introduction to yoga, but I did keep coming back, and each time I got to stay a little bit longer. He was doing a little bit better with the childcare, and I was able to make it through a class or two, and quickly saw a change. My physical body, my posture was better. Yes. I was more aware of how I was holding myself and holding him, giving myself support with pillows when needed. So really just taking better care physically. But I slept better. I was calmer. There's so many other benefits than just that physical, which is why I kept coming back to practice. And then we were trying for many years after having our son to have a second child, and we had lots of infertility issues and testing, and I continued to do yoga, which was invaluable during that time, just for the stress and anxiety of, a monthly cycle, as hard as it is, and then you're adding all these extra drugs into your system to try to stimulate more eggs. And we ended up going through IVF twice. And, so through that whole time, I luckily had the yoga practice as a support for the anxiety of it all, the stress of it all.
And sometimes that disappointment of, I'm not pregnant, so and I think that I love that, because not that I love that you went through that. Let me clarify. Mm-hmm. I love that you gave that a voice, Michele, because there are so many things in life, whether we're applying for a job or we're planning a wedding or planning a child's wedding or dating or marrying or divorcing, where we have these ups and downs. And I think that, I know you and I are on the same wavelength when it comes to being able to handle those things without self-medicating with a bottle of wine or now I do like a glass of wine, right? But without saying I'm going to drink a whole bottle of wine to wash my worries away, or I want to live on Tylenol or ibuprofen or whatever, things like that. So one thing that popped into my head that I want to give voice to is you were talking about pillows and propping ourselves up and making sure our alignment is ideal. And I remember when I started yoga, I felt like I came from a desk where I was hunched over, and I was also in 5th, 6th grade. I remember being one of 2 of the tallest girls in the class and not quite being so happy about it. I mean, eventually other girls passed me up in high school, but I remember feeling like I kind of stuck out. Look at me now. I wear my hair standing up, so I gain another 1.5 inches, 2 inches, depending on what week it is. But you know, I see oftentimes teenagers who will, female teenagers often, usually is.
Even males now, just because of
Yes,
devices,
yes.
phones and computers.
Yes, and so that's what I wrote down was computers, sitting over a computer, tech neck.
Yeah.
I mean, see, I told you this could be an entire series of, of episodes. But so I love what you shared about what you noticed and how it helped you mentally. Do you want to talk about spiritually too? Because I know that you and I are on the same wavelength with that too.
Yeah, and it helped in other areas as well, like you said, spiritually, emotionally. We tried IVF several times. We were not successful at all, and they said it would probably not work. They said I probably would not have another child. So it was about letting go of a preconceived notion of what you think your family is going to look like.
Yeah.
And deciding that it's a time not to do any more harm to yourself and go down this path of trying different things. Because we had the option after IVF, we could have got a surrogate, we could have went through adoption, but there's so many, like you said, ups and downs and disappointments. And, we just came to the realization that it was enough, it was enough stress, anxiety, and we just wanted to move forward. So, yoga teaches you about letting go and not harming and not clinging to an ideal of what you think your life should look like.
Yeah, repeat that one more time, because that is a message that is, I adore you. And one of the things, I'm so blessed to have you as a friend because you're always so profound. And that is such a profound statement. So I'll let you say it again. You don't have to repeat it exactly, but the concept of what we
you have a certain ideal of what your life is going to look like, whether it's marriage or kids or career. It can be anything. In this case, it was a family, and you have to let go of clinging to it and just accept what you have. So we did that. By then we had a 4-year-old, almost 4-year-old. So we gave away a lot of the baby stuff. And a few months later, without any intervention, I was pregnant again.
Yes. And so you totally let go, totally freed yourself. And I'm going to add a word that I feel like needs to be said. I feel like you were also extremely grateful, for your husband, for your son, for your gorgeous cat at the time, for the lifestyle you lived. I always have known you to be super positive, super grateful, super giving. And, I think being in that place and letting go the way you did is exactly why you have your beautiful, talented daughter as well as your handsome and very gifted and talented son. So kudos, I'm clapping for you. And one thing it brought up for me is, I had this ideal of what my health was going to look like for the rest of my life, And interestingly enough, I had a conversation with Mark recently after my shoulder replacement. And he's like, why do you always feel like you have to be 110% healthy? And I said, I'll tell you why. Because at a very young age in our marriage, very young time in our marriage, on our 10-year anniversary, I moved him out of the house, as you know, because you were there to support me, to receive a kidney and a liver, thankfully 39 days later. But on our 10-year anniversary, I didn't know how long it was going to take. And at that point, it was in my mind that I was like, I'm going to eat right, think right, get even deeper into my spirituality. I'm going to, make sure I am strong, I am healthy, I am, just everything that, that would look like. And then, 2019, I had an accident and it all went downhill. Now I have a bionic hip, left hip and right shoulder, a newly right shoulder that's still not awake yet. We're working on it again on Friday at physical therapy, but I had to let go of all those ideals that I was going to be, because I had a sick husband. I had to take even better care of my health. And when I say health, body, mind, spirit, soul, however you want to call it both, because, and I think when we're, having our family, it's like we as women sometimes feel like it's our issue. It's our, because we are this, mighty person who gets to carry a baby for 40 weeks, and all day long. There's no time that you get a little break like, oh my gosh, it's hurting my back. Here, let me give you the baby, right? No, it's 40 weeks of nonstop, being tickled in the throat, tickled in the belly, feet coming out, head pushing, hands pressing, it's all good if you're considering getting pregnant. It's all wonderful, but it is a commitment. And I love that you shared such a personal, story, because the transformation there is profound, and the basket instead of the pot of gold, the basket with Keely at the end of that rainbow is even more brilliant, What about, let's talk about your students, like from, on the mat, 20 years ago till now, like I was thinking about it for myself, and I thought, in the beginning when I was teaching, I remember people coming in with injuries, like runners, saying, my friend said I need to take yoga. My doctor said I need to take yoga, and that was fun to watch them transition into more of like, oh, wow, it's not just for me to get a stretch, there's gift beyond it. But what have you noticed, and what do you want to give a voice to? Because you have so much experience.
I think some of it may have to do with the classes I was teaching then versus the classes I'm teaching now. So 20 years ago, I was teaching, vinyasa power as a new teacher. I taught prenatal yoga for a long time, which was fabulous. So I did have, like you said, people coming in that were runners, or, the weekend warrior that would come in and then, have issues with their body that they were looking to strengthen or stretch. I find nowadays there's more people coming in with the mental. So it's stress, anxiety, problems with sleep. So it's kind of shifted. I mean, they still have those other aches and pains too, but it's, a lot of the mental as well. And like I said, now I'm teaching a little bit differently. I'm not doing the power and the fast and the flow. I'm doing, the restorative yoga where you're holding the poses, and the yoga nidra and meditation, which, is a little bit maybe different students, attracts different students. But the same in with my practice. I mean, I think in the beginning, the same with you, you're trying to learn all the poses. You want to, do all the arm balances, all the inversions. I got that one, show me the next one. That's kind of the way you feel in the beginning when you're practicing, like you're trying to, increase what you can do with your body, which is fun at a young age, right?
At a young, capable age. Right now, I just like to be able to lift my arm, but
Right. And I think that's where the transition with the students I have now, it's about like, what do I want to be able to do in 5 years? What do I want to be able to do in 10 years? And how can I keep myself healthy and use my practice to enable me to do those things I love?
And that is definitely where I'm at right now. It's not about, competing. It was funny. I was in physical therapy the other day, and the girl beside me is a professional dancer. And you and I would have been, I finally had to say something. I just couldn't stop myself. And of course, my husband is right now my Uber driver because I'm not allowed to drive yet. But, and I thought he was going to yell at me, but luckily he had his head in his computer. But her pelvis was so far tilted forward, as you can envision a dancer to be. And she had a problem with her calf muscle was so like just tight. And I was like, there's so much pulling on the back of her leg because the tailbone is up, the front of the pelvis is down, like we have to balance this pelvic bowl but of course I was there on the table receiving therapy. So it wasn't really for me to like, hey, let's roll out a yoga mat. Let me show you a couple things in front of the mirror, but I just found myself like, ooh, I want to go help you. And at the end, I had a little conversation with her and she's like, kind of shrugged her shoulders at me. I'm lucky I'm 36 and I'm still dancing. And what I didn't have the voice to say at the time, of course, my brain was a little slow at the moment, but I was thinking, in my 40s, I was pretty fit, teaching yoga, bar, Zumba, paddleboard yoga, paddleboarding, and had the body that I had hoped for. Of course, at that point, I thought I could lose 5-10 pounds. Now I would beg to have just 5 pounds on that body. I'd be happy, right? So it all changes, especially after an accident, but everything in hormones and life and a pandemic and like the list goes on. But I was thinking to myself, had I had the time, the clarity at the time, I would have said to her, that's awesome that you're dancing at 36 still, but I would like to see you dancing at 100 because the likelihood that we can live to be 100 is much more likely than our great grandparents. Yeah. And I would prefer to be doing the things I love. Now, I might not be Zumba dancing at 90, 100, but I'd still like to be able to move and shake and dance in a different way, shape, and form. And I just felt like intuitively, the PT guy, he's a doctor of physical therapy. He was trying to get to her like, but you have to understand, like, you can't keep beating your body up. Right. It's so to your point, kudos, I'm drinking my hot tea, but cheers. Yes, I raised my mug to that because I think it's something we need to, explain and express that, even in your 30s, you want to think about how will you be in your 40s, in your 50s, your 60s, in your 80s, all those decades of longevity. And, hopefully you're avoiding a hip and a shoulder replacement before you're 55, because let me tell you, as wonderful as these parts are, the surgery is not fun and the recovery is not easy. And it takes time like I haven't been on my mat in years because I just couldn't do down dog anymore or plank. I couldn't stand in balance poses because my hip was torn up. But let's do the mental health because that I think is a huge topic. I just interviewed a woman about that. And she had her own personal experience, but let's talk about that because that shows up in many different, I want to say in many different like ways, shapes, and forms, from not feeling happy or feeling gloomy to not wanting to live another day or another hour. But, what are you seeing and how are you able to help? Because I know you do.
Yeah. Well, actually, I think May is Mental Health Awareness Month, actually.
Oh,
yeah. I don't know when this will be playing, but I think that this is Mental Health Awareness Month. So with my, most of my clients in group classes, students, I try to teach them techniques. I tell them like tools for their tool belt. I want to give you things you can use, and it's great when you do them with me in a class, or one-on-one. But I want you to be able to do them on your own. I want you to feel comfortable enough to be able to do them when you need them, because, you're practicing here with me. You might feel great right now. You might not be depressed. You might not be anxious. You might not be stressed. You might feel fine in this setting, but you want to be able to use it when you need it. So we breath work is like the number one thing. The biggest way to make a shift and a change in how you're feeling is to focus on your breathing. Just becoming more aware and pausing can make a big difference during the day. Just stopping for a moment with what you're doing and taking some conscious deep breaths in and out. So I teach them a lot of breath work to use off of the mat in their daily life, whether they're in the car and, they're in traffic, or they're trying to fall asleep at night. There's different techniques for different things depending on what you have going on. And then we also do, like you love Yoga Nidra. We use Yoga Nidra, a deep relaxation technique to help with, it can help with anything, but anxiety, stress, sleep. It's really great for sleep as well. It can give you like a mini pick-me-up during the middle of the day. If you're feeling depressed, instead of, or you're feeling tired, instead of grabbing your soda or your coffee and caffeinating, right, you can do a Yoga Nidra, and yourself, you can give yourself some energy just by that. So with most of my students, we're using the other aspects of yoga, not the asana as much. There is some asana in there, but there are, that's one of 8 limbs. And I think in the West, there's a lot of focus on the asana, on the physical postures. And people are, like you said, coming in to work out. They want to get a workout. Even in a yoga practice, you've had it. I know you have. They want to beat themselves up, right? You've gotten accidentally knocked over by somebody kicking up with something when we were
in a headstand because they weren't listening, and I got kicked in the jaw. Yes, that is one that I'll never forget.
Somebody doing push-ups at the beginning of a yoga class,
right, during warm-up.
During the warm-up. So people have the idea that it is, exercise, and they want to beat themselves up like they would in any practice. But in the classes that I'm teaching now, we're kind of shifting more to self-care. How can I take better care of myself? How can I tune in to how I'm feeling? Not just the physical, but the emotional, the mental as well.
I think there's, in my opinion, right, I see oftentimes a huge disconnect in how we feel, and then us just thinking, oh no, I'm not going to feel that way. Like that's not that's not appropriate. That's not acceptable. And I like to call it the one size fits all paradigm or life or world, where people think, oh, Michele, you're a mother of 2. You should, whatever, fill in the sentence, right? I always use the example when Sonia was in kindergarten at her Spanish English school, and I went to the holiday party. I was so excited to see these they were all so cute. You wanted to take them all home, but listen, I had 2. I knew I couldn't take any more. But I left the party all excited, like, oh, I got to meet her little friends. And she came home off the bus and at the dinner table announced that all the kids in the class agreed that I look like a man, because I did not have mothers are supposed to have long hair, in many of her friends, especially the Latino families, mom had very long hair. And, we're talking, 12 years ago, may have changed, but beautiful long hair, dark, luscious, shiny. And, it was funny, by the time she was in middle school with the same exact children, your mom's a cool mom with the short hair, and it was just so funny. I mean, how it changed. And I did that night at the dinner table. I even felt bad as a grown woman that, I didn't fit in, or I wasn't pleasing to these kindergartners who I found just so adorable. But I think that things like that can make us disconnect or feel like we have to be something we're not, which I love. Yoga, I think, gives us that ability to realize any pose, whatever it is, or any breath work or any whatever, is going to look different on you than it does on me, because I have two bionic body parts and you luckily have all your native parts. But, you know, also just the way we were born, we're different.
Right.
And it's a celebration of everyone's uniqueness, which is exactly what Exquisitely Aligned stands for. So I love the fact that you brought that up about the mental health and being able to connect back to each, like I want to say, to each of those chakras, to each of those energy centers, to each of those times in our lives, right? Because some of the poses are for grounding versus some are for like the meditations that you do could be grounding or crown chakra. And there was one other thing you brought up that, exercise, right? You were talking about, you know, here in America. So I'm going to make you laugh. I don't know if I told you, but I've had a few friends here tell me they practice yoga. So I was like, oh, that's wonderful. Tell me about the studio and the class. Because, you know, once I get all these things fixed on my body, you know, at the time, this was before I knew I needed operations to fix them. Here I was thinking, you know, all the physical therapy, massage therapy, acupuncture, blah, blah, blah was going to fix it. But they were telling me these classes are with rock and roll loud music.
Yes.
And super high heat and moving fast. And so I was like, oh my gosh, like, you know, like trying to envision this, and I could feel smoke coming out of my ears, like, oh, danger, 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 you know, and like, where's the mind body? Where is the breath? Where is the peace? Where is the ability to like go within when you're being bombarded with pounding loud music with a heavy beat, maybe not even and heavy words sometimes, right? Versus like what you play, because I've been to your class. So it was just like, oh, is that California yoga? Like I walked away. And
it's popular here too.
Is it now?
Yeah.
Okay, that's making me cringe. But, you know, I'm sure once I get this shoulder working again, I can find, I think the studio around the corner will have some of the classes that I missed. But it's fascinating how I was going to say as Americans, but I think this happens in many other countries as well, see it as an exercise. But I love the fact that you were talking about, especially here in Mental Health Month, right? That it goes so far behind. For me, it wasn't the exercise. Well, for me, I would say it gave me strength because I had way too much flexibility, dangerous flexibility. And now I've learned through these surgeries why I had that. The bone structure wasn't there to hold me in the right place. But beyond that, for me, it was the spiritual journey. What about you? So coming into it, you know, what did you see?
Definitely. I think we're talking before about how I started yoga, and I think I mentioned that I was doing it when I was pregnant, and then through in the fertility struggles. But I actually started teaching when I was pregnant the second time. I got certified to help another instructor who was teaching the prenatal and really didn't have anybody to back her up. And during that time, to practice when you're pregnant is just an amazing gift. You mentioned trying to, as women, we want to do everything, keep everything going, keep juggling all those balls and don't let anything hit the floor. And we feel that way, even when something monumental, right? We're cooking another life, and we feel like we still have to do everything else and keep everything else humming along. So just that aspect of having a yoga practice where you are tuning in to what is going on and making a connection to another life inside of you. Like that's the only time that one body has two heartbeats, right?
Yeah.
And you're breathing for two. You're, you know, eating food and then breaking it down and nourishing two bodies. You know, your body is doing a tremendous amount without you having to feel like you have to, you know, keep the house clean and keep the healthy meals on the table with no no assistance at all. So it
Right.
was really a spiritual connection. This is probably the first time of just tuning into, that you've been given this wonderful gift of a life inside, and
Mhm.
to nourish that light that's within you. Because I think, we talk about two heartbeats in the same body. I think of it as two lights, like a light at their heart and a
Yeah.
light at your heart, at the same time. So that was
Mhm.
probably the first time really feeling through the practice of spiritual connection.
Now, I don't really want to be pregnant, but since I didn't get to do that, as you're speaking, I'm thinking, oh, I missed out on that. Totally missed out on that because by the time I started practicing, I already had Kai and then we adopted Sonia. So I didn't get to experience that. But wow, how magical that sounds. Now you're going to increase the amount of pregnancies, Michele. Watch out, world. There's going to be another baby boom just because it came out of the mouth of Michele Schmidt
Yeah,
so beautifully. But
yeah.
it is true. And I think um, one of the lovely things that yoga also taught me is, as you alluded to, is like what's really important. I like the 80-20 rule because I love math, always have. And I think as our background as department store buyers, math was like at our fingertips all day
Yeah.
long, right? Really large numbers, but dollars, dollar signs. But, I think that oftentimes, especially working with people, and I know it happens to you too, is that when they really look at, when you start talking about to them the 4-letter word I don't like, I tell the kids it's a curse word in this house, busy.
Yeah.
BUSY. I'm busy. What do you need? And I always say, don't ever tell me you're busy. If I call you or text you, that isn't, or you walk into the house or into my office, I don't want to hear you're busy. That we are. So many people are so overwhelmed, which I think that busyness can lead to some of the mental health stress or some of that anxiety is I have so many things on my list. I'm never going to get them done. Well, what's really important, and you alluded to, without asking for help,
Yeah.
which I love because there are people in our world who will help us. And there are people in the world who need a job too, like hiring it out, whether it be a child to be a mother's helper, or for you to have a date night and you have a babysitter, or to walk your dog so you can sit in the yard and drink a cup of tea because your dog's pulling you around the neighborhood. I mean, I don't know, your dog's not well behaved today. But like finding, and the other thing I saw the other day was somebody walking the dog, but totally not paying attention to the dog. They were on the phone and like really having, texting and, and the dog was like, wait, I need to use this bush, like, hold on. And the dog was being dragged. And I thought, this poor woman is missing out on this opportunity to spend time with this, furry friend,
Right.
outside in nature, maybe put the phone on, or leave the phone at the house, even put the ringer off and enjoy that 20-30 minute walk and let the dog connect with you. Because I know for you, having lost a cat recently and bringing 2 new adorable ones into the house, they enrich our house. Actually, one of my acupuncturists said, do you have pets? I said, oh gosh, we have a lot of pets. At one point we had 5, now we're down to 3, 2 dogs and an elderly cat. And he's like, oh, that's good. In Chinese medicine, animals bring health and joy. And I was like, yes, they bring a lot of fur, but yes, more so they bring health and joy, because they do, I think, help with our mental health and help relax us if we let them. If we rush right by them, I don't think it works. But so I you and I had a conversation over the phone prior to this podcast today, where I was telling you about me personally, what I'm experiencing after this head injury 4 years ago. And then, of course, many people are experiencing similar things, I found out through talking with you. with all your clients on the mat, and then someone else who does shamanic healing energy, another person who does counseling. And I'm trying to remember if there was one other conversation. Anyway, 3 is enough, but talking right, 3s usually happen for me. But about energy centers that seem to be unhappy, blocked, or miserable. Right. And so I'd love to discuss that with you. So I'm going to let you take it from here. You run with it.
All right. Yeah, we had started the conversation. You were talking about your hip, and I was mentioning that is one of the energy centers, your second energy center. In yoga, we call them chakras. They're other names if you're looking at Buddhism or Hinduism or Chinese medicine. They have different names. But the second chakra in yoga, which is right below the belly button, an inch or so below the belly button, and it's your seat of creativity, of expression. But really the first 3, which are located from like your navel down, are all about the individual, your survival, procreation, creativity. And then when we get above that, it's about we. The heart is in the center. The heart is kind of the connection between the lower 3 and the upper. So we were talking about your hip, and I mentioned that was connected with the second chakra. They all have a color assigned to them. Now the color is a newer something that's been assigned in the last 20, 30 years. So that is not from the ancient yoga text, but more of a, not an acupuncture, but a holistic Ayurvedic. Comes from the Ayurvedic. So the second one would be the color orange, and it's water. So fluid, all about the fluids of the body. And then you were mentioning you were having issues with the fluids in your body, retaining water. So it's about creativity and it going with the flow. So I've had quite a few students that have had hip and other students that have shoulder. Some like you have had both. And the second chakra goes, they all can go together, but the second and the fifth, which is here at the throat, are pretty intimately connected. So the throat is the fifth, and that has to do with not just your throat and your voice and your ears, but it also goes down the arms to your shoulder and your hands. So
and your thyroid, right?
Yeah, and your thyroid, yes. So
you're hitting all the things that that I personally have been experienced for the past 4 years. Yes,
right. Yeah, and the fifth has a color to it. It's a color blue, and the throat is not just So the second is your creativity, but the fifth is how you express that creativity.
Right. How you voice it.
How you not voice it, right? You could be holding it in, you could be expressing it. You could be afraid to say something to hurt somebody's feelings. You could be holding back sometimes and walking on eggshells. All that stuff is so
I like to say that is, I call her Nora. Nora may be somebody who is always trying to be nice and people pleasing. And therefore she, also may be living with somebody who could have narcissistic tendencies, who wants to be in the limelight all the time. And therefore she's the behind the scenes shining the light on them. And it doesn't always have to be a spouse. It could be a child. I mean, it could happen in a family of maybe 3 kids, 5 kids, whatever. There's one who's always in the limelight, and then the other child feels like they have to suppress or keep hold within their truth. And then we talked a little bit before about this one size fits all paradigm where, a woman of a certain age should, so then she might, not what she really wants to say doesn't really come out because she's feels intimidated or, doesn't want to be judged even. And so coming with Hashimoto's disease, right, newly diagnosed, new shoulder, new hip, it was interesting. And so those of you who are listening, I told Michele, let's not discuss this anymore. Let's make sure we talk about this in a way, in a format where we can share it with others, because Michele, you're seeing this also not just in me,
Right.
but also on the mat with your clients.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I think some of it could be over the last few years. You know, we went through a lot. The pandemic, there was quite a long time where we were, our mouths were covered from here down, right?
Yes. No expression.
Yeah.
No expression. Yeah. And not
what the person is thinking or feeling. I mean, look at how babies respond, right? They respond based on facial cues, and we couldn't see each other's face, and that the voice and everything was covered.
And not being able to actually, you know, if you were in lockdown or whatever they had called it, I don't even remember because it was so not my cup of tea, you know, not being able to have a sense of community, being held back and feeling alone. You really were, you know, cut off from, you know, wedding celebrations, huge birthdays, and graduations. I know that happened in both of our houses. And we're not alone in that. And you were talking about before creativity, right? And expressing the second and fifth. And those two happen when we're in our community. You know, you're able to laugh, you're able to smile, you're able to speak, you know, meet like we used to for a walk and chat the whole time and connect on a deeper level. And therefore we were pulled away. And you were talking about flow, which, you know, I'm a big proponent of being in flow. And that definitely didn't feel like flow for me. It felt like stagnancy.
Definitely. Yeah. And we were afraid to get close to each other and talk.
Yeah.
You know, singing is another, humming, singing, chanting. Those are all fifth chakra. And we were afraid to be close to anybody and really express yourself for quite a long time. And even now there are people that for health reasons still are having to wear a mask. So there's still the same situation. And I mean, it's 3 years later and they're still, when they're out in public, at least I have people in class that still are wearing every once in a while a mask.
Yeah. And they just took away the mask mandate here in the hospital where I had my shoulder, but it was the Sunday after my surgery, which was on a Thursday. So, you know, so if I bump into the wonderful nurses that cared for me overnight, I wouldn't probably recognize them because I never got to see their nose. I'll never forget my acupuncturist. When he took the mask off, I was like, oh, you have facial hair, you know, like, and you do have teeth. Oh, that's lovely. You know, like you took off the mask, you're like, oh, you have braces. Oh, you know, you lost a tooth, a little kid, you know. It was just so shocking, you know, like, I thought I knew what you look like, you know, and I had the surgeon come in the morning of the surgery just to check in. And, you know, of course, they got an initial which body part they're replacing for you. So I had to get his autograph, like a tattoo on my shoulder. And when he walked in, he didn't have on his mask, but he had on his surgical hat. So I told my husband when he came in, I was like, who are you? You know, and he's like, hey, Gina, how are you doing today? And I was like, still looking at him like, who are you? You know? And then it took me a minute because I realized the questions he was asking me was, okay, he's my surgeon now. I've met him before, but totally didn't recognize him because his hair was covered and his, you know, nose, chin, jaw, cheekbones, lips were all exposed and his teeth. So I was like, oh my God, I had to tell him in my follow-up, I apologize, Dr. Kassam. You know, I was like nervous. And then B, I hadn't seen you with your mask off, like, and for me, it was like overwhelming. Who are you with your hat on and your mask off? But so what are you hearing, or either what are you hearing people say if they give it a voice, or what are you sensing besides the few things that we mentioned could be going on or is going on?
I think it's just trying to get back to whatever a new normal is now. It's a big change. I think in some cases we changed our habits.
Yes.
We, even myself, I will work out at home. I will practice yoga at home, where before I did it at the gym. I still do it at the gym too, but I do days at home as well. My shopping habits have changed. Everything has changed. And it's still an adjustment to kind of connect up with other people and make those social commitments. It's still, it's still new after a couple of years of being for a year almost in lockdown, and then gradually things being lifted. So people are still adjusting. I still have students that will practice with me online that have not come back to an in-person meeting, and it's 3 years later. And we can do some social interaction when you're doing a class online, but there's something about that in person and face-to-face as well.
Yes, I agree with you. That's why I'm counting down the days till your visit.
And my students are older, so they may be living alone. They might be living alone. The spouse has passed away, and they're not getting out much. They may be going to the grocery store. They may be getting things delivered. Right? We've made a lot of changes, and we're not. Like you mentioned, busy. I feel like I used to run around a lot, and I don't. You can order and have it show up. Right. So it has changed a lot of the ways people interact, and it's still, and even socially, we're just starting to, try to meet up with people and do things, because people are committed to other things now. They have, kids doing sports like they always did or whatever else, but their schedules kind of change, and you're trying to figure out, okay, how do we make all this work so we can get some face time, some personal time.
Finding that balance. And so talking about having older clients, right, doing things online. And I think also many people working from home. I know when you were speaking just now, I was thinking about, even when I was still in Charlotte, I think the gas prices went up, not when they went up really high, but when they started going up. And I remember I used to just run out of the house for butter. Let's say I'm baking something and, something crazy, or go to deposit a check. And then all of a sudden it became like, no, I'm just going to make a loop when I go to teach. And then I take my class for me, and then I'll go to the grocery store, pick up that butter, deposit the check, and come home, and it became like, okay, I'm spending more time in my house. And I have to tell you, I love my house. I know you love your house too, because right. We do, you are crafty, as you said, or as I read, but we do make our house our castle, and it feels like our sanctuary. It is our sanctuary, right? We feel good. And that is part of being exquisitely aligned too. You want the energy of wherever you're going to support you, to support your dreams, to support you mentally, to support you spiritually, whatever, if that's a little corner of a room that you have where you like to sit in prayer, meditation, or just silence, doing it the yoga nidra. But I wrote myself a note that working from home, I think, can be a blessing and a curse in the sense of, like, Mark is right now in Dallas on business. He comes home tonight, and I'm interested to see, if he's like energized, because I said to him recently, Mark, you might, although we each have an office here in the house, you might need to get we don't have WeWork right around here, but there are some places that have smaller he doesn't need a huge office.
Yeah.
He doesn't have people coming in. He's working by himself, but some place where he can get out. And I oftentimes tell him, have a lunch Zoom call with your BFFs. He's got one in DC who was our best man, one in Charlotte. He met after we were married, like find a way, or go to the club and meet up with somebody here in the neighborhood just to get out of the house. And I'm a people person, that. Like I love, like, who's here? Who can we talk to? Who can we meet? Who haven't I seen? Who do I need to catch up with? And finding that way. And I think yoga also gives us that ability from a standpoint of balancing on the mat, aligns with balancing our lives with joy, not just that hour and a half class that you taught is my only time to feel delighted, blissful, but to have that all day long, like I always say, what don't you like doing? And if it's something you really don't need to do, then let one of us in the house, like we work as a team, fill in the gap. Who's really good at this, let them do that, and let the other person pick up the other pieces. We don't have roles where everybody, that's a boy role, that's a girl role. You know what I mean? Like, especially when you have pets in the house and you have to clean a litter box or scoop the yard, like we don't segregate them as male, female, child, adult, but figuring out that balance and asking for help. And
it kind of goes back to the beginning when I was talking about how I first started yoga and using support when I was breastfeeding. That's support for my physical body, but sometimes we have trouble taking the other type of support, right? The emotional support. You taught for years, you see students in a yoga class that are like, nope, I'm not using any props, that's a crutch. It's not a crutch to support yourself, right? You don't have to be able to do everything yourself. It is okay to rely on others and get some support. So physical support, like I was using with an infant, or emotional, spiritual support, whatever you need.
Yeah, that just gave me goosebumps. I'm like, yes. And it did go back to the beginning. It is. And that's, I think today, I wanted to give a voice with your help because of the 2 decades worth of classes and experience and trainings and knowledge and passion and fire for this, for yoga, is that it stretches people's body, it strengthens the body, but it also stretches our mindset. It stretches us in other ways, spiritually, if you're open to that. It grounds us, keeps our feet firmly on the ground. I did an interview recently with Carrie Ann in London, and she was talking about her dad always saying, Carrie Ann, head out of the clouds, feet on the ground, and I was like, yes, but having our head in the cloud is so lovely. It's heavenly, it's divine. But if we could do both, I'm not a proponent of head always out of the clouds. I think it's nice to be there. It's a great, spiritually, it's fantastic, but also the vision, like from being up.
Opportunity. It's going to open opportunity. Yeah.
Totally opens, for me, intuition opens, finding our inspiration from within instead of always having to look outside, and having that bird's eye view of what's really important or what's really going on here. I'm in the middle of an argument. Is it really necessary? Or what are we really arguing about? Or maybe the person's in a place where they don't feel well. I was privy to watching that from outside, not being involved in the argument. But it was like, somebody is really sick here and they're not thinking the way they would normally because they're their battery is like beyond low. It's like running on fumes. So you can't, like, it's not worth having this discussion right now, because the person that they were discussing with couldn't even comprehend, you know what I mean? Not that they were not mentally intelligent. No, they were just their body was trying to heal.
Right. Well, it reminds me again of the energy centers. When you're communicating, the person that was trying to heal is probably working from those lower centers because they're concerned with I and survival. And the other person was probably communicating or receiving the communication from an upper center, from the heart or the head. And if you're not on the same level, it just doesn't go anywhere. I don't remember where I read this before, but I always love this. They said,
let's say you made it up, Michele.
I don't know who to give credit for. I didn't make this up, but if you throw a ball to somebody and you throw it high above their head, they have to put their arm up to catch that ball. If you throw a ball low, you have to put the glove low to catch that ball. So if the person's communicating from the low, and you've got your love here, you're communicating here or here at the heart, you're never going to catch it, right? You can catch it and then maybe bring it up to you, but you have to meet them where they are or somewhere in the middle, and then try to rise it up to where maybe you're speaking from the heart or the wisdom and intuition.
Yeah, I love visuals, you know that. So that's one I'm definitely going to borrow, but I'm going to say it's from Michele Schmidt because that's where I heard it from. But that is beautiful. Although, I'm not always fond of balls.
I know. It was a little
maybe I'll have to think about it.
Soft kids ball.
Yes, a very a dollar from the dollar store, one of the inflatable beach balls. That's how I use that experience. Not a hard ball that fits in the size of your hand, because that's not a good thing for me, not a good match. But it's so true, and I think it happens so often. And I think that was one of the things yoga taught me, as somebody who loves to speak, is when to not speak. Mm-hmm. Like when there's a time where it's falling on deaf ears, or like you're saying, that person can't take it in because their body is I'm trying to heal. I'm trying to process. What's going on. And that definitely was the case when Mark was ill some 13, 14 years ago although I was wanting to speak, I had to walk away and just, take that energy and turn it around. I didn't bury it. For me, I would hum or put on some music and sing, especially in the shower where nobody could hear me. And the acoustics make me sound like Celine Dion, or I sound great with Josh Groban, those kind of deals. But, you brought up humming and singing before and chanting. Those are all wonderful, wonderful, fabulous things. Is there anything else that you want to say before I draw a card, an opening to possibility card? Because there's we have time, but is there anything else that came to your mind? Because like I said, I could do like a 3 to 5, 10 maybe series.
No, I think that we covered everything we were talking about covering for today.
Yeah. So you have to come back. That's your official invite. I know I emailed you and told you this morning, hey, I had this brilliant thought in the shower that this could be a total series, you and I, because there's so many things we could talk about that fit right in. So I am shuffling as best as I can, which is not the best, but it is as best I can. And I'm just going to, I'm going to start now, and you just tell me when to stop, and I'll, whatever my thumb is on, I will pull that card for you. And so whenever you're ready.
Go ahead and stop.
Senses. That is perfect.
Yeah.
I gotta write that one down because that makes me laugh. Every time I pull a card, it always seems to be the right card for
Yeah.
the conversation that we've had. So this definitely works. Your five senses accentuate the bliss of life. And you can answer all or one of these or two of these, whatever you wish. How does smell enhance your taste? What role does taste play in nourishing your body? Which sense makes you most alive?
Oh, wow. Gosh, which sense makes me most alive? I would say I'm a big visual person, so, and I love to be outside in nature, but then you're outside and you're smelling things and you're hearing things, but I would have to say the visual component of it that makes me feel the most alive. We did Living Your Strengths together
Yes.
ago in Charlotte, and one of my, I think it was one or two, was learner.
Yes.
Learn, and a lot of that has to do with visual, seeing something and thinking, I can figure that out. I can figure out how to do
it. And you usually do,
Yeah. Now, what was the first question about?
Oh, hang on. Oh, taste. Hold on. I got to pull it back out. But the other thing about you that I didn't mention today is that I always, you are a learner, and that you do. The other gift that you have is that when you see something, you usually are quick to connect. Like, Gina, you need to read this article, or did you know this person? And that is such a treat to be one of your friends, to be on the receiving end of that. Like, I'm always like, wow, like she thought of me,
I've seen something in the store. I've probably gotten into trouble with your husband. Gina, this dress would be perfect. I've done it a few times.
Yes, and then the ones that were short and cute and tight, I was like, oh, Michele should wear this because I can't fit into it. But so how does smell enhance your taste?
Okay, how does smell enhance my taste? Well, I love to have scents going in the house. I'm a big believer in using the diffuser.
Yes.
And I have something going most days. So there's always, I like the flowery, but mostly, fruity, lemon, grapefruit, the clean, fresh smells. And it's the smells that end up, that translate to maybe a memory of, childhood when you had something delicious to eat. Because it seemed like as a kid, when you're outside playing all the time and you come in all hot and sweaty, whatever it was just, the orange or apple just tasted so good. I don't know if it was, the vegetables and fruit were just fresher back then, or if it was just from being a kid and being outside all day from, dawn to dusk, and you come in and you're like, oh, that taste, So I think I definitely am a big proponent in smell, and having, it can change your mood. It can give you energy, like your peppermints. It can soothe you, like your lavenders. You can go somewhere in the middle with your. I love the fruity smells, but
that's perfect. I remember after my head injury, I brought a glass of red wine, a brand that I keep in the house, to my nose, as I was going to take a sip, and I realized I couldn't smell. And then I tasted it, and I realized I couldn't taste it either. It was like, okay, now this, and I said to my husband, the wine spoiled. And so he takes a sip. He's like, there's nothing wrong with it, and then I tasted my meal, and I was like, yeah, everything is the same. So it was the first time, and actually that was after making these, years after, that I realized how much smell played into like what I was bringing to my mouth. But I'm laughing because as you're speaking, I have a scented candle going. As you can see, it's almost at the end of its life, but I too enjoy surrounding myself in I was going to say luxurious smells, because they do bring back an emotion or inspire us to think or feel a certain way, whether it be like we're on vacation or, we're getting ready for date night, whatever, perfumey where it's like date night. I know one woman, actually the owner of this company, she said she likes like sandalwood, which I think of like Mark, because oftentimes he'll put cologne that has that smell in there. And she's like, yeah, I like the smell of my man. And I was like, oh, that's funny. I like the smell of women's perfume, So anyway, well, it has been a great pleasure to be with you today and to give a voice to these. You're very welcome, to give a voice to these very current and important topics of, our creativity and how we're expressing ourselves in our lives and being in flow with the, I want to say with, the word just escaped me. I was going to say with what's around you, but that's not what I want to say, because I would prefer that using yoga, breathwork, mindfulness, meditation, all the things that you teach, Michele, help us ground us and allow us to appear in our truth, transparently, but being in flow with life, not with what's around us, because sometimes what's around us is utter craziness. And at least in my experience, you could call it whatever you wish, but sometimes what's around us coming in and bombarding our brains, our eyes, as another visual person like you, like the news, the newspaper, the news on the mobile device, could be The Office, could be so forth. So if you haven't experienced Michele, at the bottom, you will be able to find how to connect with her on social media, also on her email, website, and so forth. And what she has to offer this world is brilliant. And I always say kudos for sharing your gifts and talents, acknowledging them first and foremost, and then sharing them in the way that you do, because you touch people's lives in a way that is so profound, as friends like myself and your clients on the mat. I know that what you do changes lives. And when you change one person's life, it changes 10,000 other people's lives. So kudos, thank you, and namaste, my dear friend.
Namaste.